have no idea what the
All right, welcome to another episode of I Have No Idea What the Fuck. And what I'm going to be talking about today, this is G-Aware Nerd, and what I'm going to be talking about today is vulnerability and relaxation. I made two posts on TikTok where you can follow me on TikTok at G underscore aware nerd. The word aware and nerd is one word, and then underscore media. So G underscore aware nerd underscore media. And I made two posts recently where one was talking about vulnerability and the other was talking about relaxation. And the first one I put up was about vulnerability. And basically, I'm going to get a little bit more in depth on these two concepts and how they interplay with one another. So with vulnerability, it comes from the Latin word vulnera, that means wound, and ability means the capacity to do something. And so your woundability, and people are like, "What? Your woundability? That doesn't sound too cool." Well, that's the issue with vulnerability. It's so funny how vulnerability is really the core of who we are. When we're with our loved ones, we're vulnerable and intimate, and it's the place where we feel the most awesome about ourselves. We don't feel the most awesome about ourselves always putting our guard up. We feel best when we're around those that we trust and we're being vulnerable and intimate with them. Yet vulnerability is one of the most panned characteristics of the human condition in our society and probably many other societies all over the world. And so I made a post on TikTok saying that vulnerability was incredibly beautiful. It is at our most vulnerable moments when we are with people that we trust that vulnerability feels beautiful. It's when we're around those that we cannot trust that vulnerability seems like a curse or a crutch. And so there, it went in my view, it went viral. It got about 7,000 likes, I think 7,000 likes on TikTok, which isn't high for TikTok, but it's high for where I'm at. And there were a lot of people said I didn't think of it this way. You really changed my life, and I was kind of blown away because it was just an inspired thought I had. And I don't even really take credit for the thought. I just thought it was a really interesting something that came to me in the moment. And so vulnerability is something that is a totally beautiful thing. And the thing is, there are two reasons why it's beautiful. Number one, it's beautiful when you're sharing it with people that you trust, that I explained earlier. And it's also beautiful because it's so rare. It's not part of our cultural conditioning to be openly vulnerable. Now, there's a scale of vulnerability. It's not just, you're just completely naked and vulnerable. There are layers to it. There are articles of, proverbial clothing, if you will, that can be taken off in succession until you're completely naked on an energetic level, and on a heart level, on a psychological level. And so it's not just, from being clothed to being completely unclothed. And so, again, vulnerability is not a championed trait, yet everybody's looking for love. The most popular songs are about love, whether it be love between, two partners or, universal love for mankind. Everybody likes those songs, especially when they're done well. We love those songs, but we don't like to really champion love in our daily life, or celebrate love, meaning love is a form of vulnerability. In case you were wondering, vulnerability in many cases is love, which I can explain further if I remember. But vulnerability is ultimately what and who you are. It is the core of who you are, that you're just letting shine and just letting it be. Vulnerability is your very being. And we don't look at that as a good thing. We don't look at that as a good trait. We look at that as not so good trait because our values are so our values are so messed up that we're on guard against other people who would take advantage of us showing vulnerability. And we're even so messed up that those that would originally have been vulnerable look for ways to take advantage of other people's vulnerability. And in the post, I said that the vulnerability of a person is so beautiful that when it's hidden, people are so starved for that the realness of vulnerability, even if they're mentally fucked, they'll try to manipulate you to get pain out of you so that they can feel your vulnerability because they're so terrified to feel their own. And it's pretty amazing that process, um that process of being vulnerable and having vulnerability. Hold on, let me set this really quick. I think I want to go live on TikTok right now. I'm gonna set my volume so I'm not being interrupted. Then I'm gonna go fucking live. All right, and then we're gonna do this. Coolsies. Coolsies. So essentially, that people will attempt to manipulate you to get pain out of you to feel your vulnerability because they're so terrified to feel it themselves. That's how beautiful vulnerability is, and that's how fucked up the programming is to get away from vulnerability. It's so interesting. It's such a schizophrenic dynamic in, humanity and in the human condition. So I've talked about vulnerability. I could talk about my own personal experiences, and if you want to hear a little bit more about that, then that's something that, please upvote this. Give a thumbs up to this podcast. Subscribe to me on YouTube if you're seeing this on YouTube. Follow me on TikTok, G_aware_nerd_media, for more content. And if you really dig this, and as you can see, I'm wearing green, which is the color of the heart chakra. I'm really digging green. I'm really rocking this green, in my opinion. So we've talked about vulnerability. Let's talk about relaxation. Relaxation is really the bedrock, the fundamental level of both manifestation and trauma healing. And so with relaxation, it is basically the opposite of tension or rigidity. Relaxation does not mean laziness or lackadaisical. It means within a structure, there is a fluid characteristic, meaning there is a definite structure, but hey, how you doing? There is a definite structure, but there's a fluid characteristic to that structure. And so, meaning if you have tension in your shoulders, your neck, your stomach, your chest, your legs, your feet, if you have tension in those places, there's definitely a structure to them. Otherwise, you wouldn't have body parts. But with relaxation, it is the maximum functionality of those body parts, of your body. And so our mind and our body can be said to be synonymous or have a deeply intimate relationship. This is why we call it psychosomatic. Psycho meaning mind, actually psyche in Greek means soul, but psycho meaning mind, and somatic meaning the body. And when we have tension in our mind, those are spaces of trauma in our mind where where consciousness and presence does not flow. So this is an area of your mind where you had trauma and you have denial, and you don't touch that. You do everything in your power to avoid that. Your behavior and thought process goes around that trauma. And I would use my other hand, but I got to hold up the pop filter right here. So let's say this is the trauma, and your mind goes around that trauma and makes it logical to go around that trauma and to reason around that trauma in order to protect yourself. But all that does is reinforce the trauma, reinforce the tension. And wherever there's tension in your mind, meaning a trauma in your mind, there's a corresponding place in your body where that trauma is held. It could be, again, in your shoulders, in your neck, in your back, in your stomach, in your chest. It could be anywhere. It could be headaches, whatever. It could be in any one of those places. And so relaxation ultimately is the process of healing and opening up that trauma so that whatever part of our body or whatever part of our mind we have relaxed, that's ultimately considered healing. And so now presence can flow through that area of your body and mind. Energy can flow through that point of your body and mind. And now there's optimum functionality. With relaxation comes optimum functionality. So it also has to do with manifestation. I was going to talk about manifestation first, so I don't know. I don't hope I didn't confuse you there. But with manifestation, you visualize with the third eye and you feel maybe with your heart and your gut that whatever it is that you want already exists. However, if you don't have receptivity, if you are not relaxed, then you cannot allow that manifestation to take on its own beautiful life, because what happens is if you let enough time go by, that manifestation takes on its own life and starts influencing your reality both within and without. But you're not allowing it to go to do its due diligence and influence you and fill you up. So you're not relaxed. So that manifestation can never, you will never, even if certain signs happen in your world, you won't even recognize them because you're not allowing that manifestation into your perception. And this relaxation also kind of, insinuates vulnerability as well. And this is where they kind of tie in together. This is where they have a very close, intimate relationship, because you can't truly be vulnerable unless you are totally relaxed. You can't really be vulnerable unless you're relaxed. If you're tense anywhere, you're not being vulnerable. Excuse me. Vulnerability, relaxation are maybe not exactly the same thing, but they're so closely related. It's hard to have one without the other. It's hard to be vulnerable without being relaxed, and it's hard to be relaxed without being vulnerable. Now, how did I come to these conclusions, to come up with this episode of the podcast? Well, I've been doing a lot of experimentation lately, especially, and realizing that we've all known that we live in a society that thrives off of creating stress in human beings. And stress is what? The total opposite of relaxation, the total opposite of vulnerability. And everything that is championed as something that makes you productive makes you more armored up, keeps a shell around you, makes you less vulnerable, so that you can get out there and be productive. But as more sensitive people or the vibration goes up and people are recognizing their sensitivities to the environment and understanding that certain changes need to be made so that human beings can perform optimally, not just for a system or a society, but just for our own enjoyment of life, we're starting to recognize that the society that we've been living in for, Jesus, it hasn't even been 100 years. It's been maybe a little over 100 years. I would say maybe 130 years. Does not serve us. So we are realizing that the importance of vulnerability and relaxation. And so for me, I've been experimenting with this idea of being vulnerable and being relaxed, because I am in situations where I am constantly tested, and I've been tested to the point where I'll just freak out and be worried about something for the longest amount of time. And I've realized, especially, over the past 6 months, that worry doesn't really do me any favors. It's like I worry. There's worries, and it doesn't really help with the manifestation, especially with the speed at which I'm manifesting things. Worry does not do me any favors. So being absolutely calm and taking care of myself in a multitude of ways has proven extremely beneficial for optimal performance as far as like manifesting is concerned and peace of mind is concerned. Peace. Also peace. We could bring peace into the equation. What do you think peace is? Peace is not tense. Peace is relaxed. Peace is vulnerable. These are all interrelated concepts that really kind of communicate the same thing. These are the keys to absolute success in self-development and in spirituality. Now, there's a lot of people who will say, well, how you got to get stronger in life. You got to be able to, get bigger muscle, and there's more tension in bigger muscle, right? Well, the thing about relaxation is it always needs to be paired with structure. So complete 100% relaxation means you're a puddle on the floor. But we're human beings that have structure to our bodies. So relaxation is the tool for the structure to function optimally, like I said earlier. So the thing is, you'll pump. Let's say you want to. Hey guys, how you doing? You'll want to get stronger in the gym. Let's say you go in the gym and you're pumping iron, pumping iron, pumping iron. But if you don't do exercises to make sure the fascia of your body are relaxed, if you don't do exercises to make sure that you're stretching and maybe doing yoga asana or a stretching exercise to make sure that the muscles of your body are attaining proper blood flow, then what you're going to get in your exercise is a lot of rigidity. You're going to look really big, but you're not going to have a lot of mobility, practical mobility. And that's the thing that you see with a lot of people who are, building up so much muscle. You need practical mobility. You can get as big as you want, but if you've lost mobility, then you're just kind of doing it for show. You're getting big for show. You're not getting big to get stronger. You're getting big just to be seen as big. And you will get stronger, but you won't have as much mobility. And if you can't move around the way that you want to move around, then you kind of handicapped yourself by becoming stronger. So as you become stronger, you always want to maintain that mobility. You always want to maintain that functionality. And the truth of the matter is, when it comes to spirituality, mind power, the way you get stronger is being able to sit in vulnerability without having to defend yourself. And when I say that, I'm not saying don't use common sense. If you're around toxic people who take advantage of you being open and vulnerable, and you feel hurt by them and you feel infected by that toxicity, you cannot be open with people like that, or you cannot have that part of the spectrum. Meaning, like, you can't have absolute vulnerability with toxic people, but you can be vulnerable in the sense of being maybe honest with certain toxic people if your intuition leads you to feel that that's the right course of action. Meaning, listen, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. That's a form of vulnerability. Truth and honesty is vulnerability. Like, all the virtues of life boil down to being truly vulnerable. That does not mean that you're strong. As a matter of fact, it means that it doesn't mean that you're not strong. It means that you absolutely are totally strong. The ability to take all your armor off and still be out on the battlefield is, some people will call that crazy. And vulnerability is crazy. Love is crazy. Truth is crazy in a world of lies. Love is crazy in a world of fear and hate. So maybe that's not the best analogy, but you guys understand what I'm saying. To be able to be vulnerable and sit in vulnerability without getting anxious or being afraid that someone's going to take advantage of you. If you can attain that space where you can be absolutely vulnerable and not be afraid of being attacked or being afraid of being wounded or being afraid of being hurt or whatever, you can attain that level. That is a level of mastery very few humans reach. And that's some spiritual shit. That's also ultimately Satori, enlightenment, samadhi, mukti, moksha. Like, that is the ultimate vulnerability, just to be completely open to the universe and not identify with any form of ego. I'm getting some messages on TikTok. Okay, I'm just getting some love. Thank you for the love. I really appreciate it. So essentially, that is what we're talking about with vulnerability. So and relaxation and peace and truth. So I want to leave you guys with the understanding that, it's not about being perfect or attaining perfect mastery. It's just understanding, it's just about reframing vulnerability in our society today, that it is a beautiful thing, and it's not a curse, and it's not a handicap. It's who you are. You are completely naked spirit or soul. And the more that you can be vulnerable with yourself in alone time, then you start cultivating spiritual strength. And then the more that you can find others that reflect or that honor and respect you for your vulnerability and are in turn vulnerable, and that you respect them for their vulnerability and honor them and hold space for them as well as they do for you, that is when you're winning. That is when you succeeded. And that is when you are starting to get to a certain level of mastery. And that is also when you become a pioneer of a new world for humanity to live in peace and harmony. It's not going to be perfect, but the more vulnerable we can be in healthy, safe spaces, and I say healthy, safe spaces for a reason, mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically healthy, the more that we can actually create an amazing society that human beings won't want to escape from. All right, you guys, love you. Please donate to the podcast. Follow me on YouTube. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me on Instagram. And I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.